Hello again, Steve here, with a few thoughts on improving the quality of our life experience. I'm just going through this book now. It's called Prophets Pray, my 7-year investigation into Warren Jeffs and the Fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints. It's a fascinating look at, once again, human psychology of extremely terrorized children, basically. And it's an astounding parallel to the one I went through about the Scientologists, and how a complete madman who is somehow charismatic and is also dealing with a bunch of people who were traumatized, seriously traumatized as children, can take a hold of people, and no matter how insane the things they talk about, no matter how illogical, they go along with them. Even those who are being seriously punished go along with it. It's astounding. It explains to me a lot about why it is that there are people, and I notice there are people on the internet, on YouTube and so on, who just support, no matter how illogical it is or how evil it is or anything like that, they support the status quo as it is. It doesn't matter really what argument is presented or what question is asked for clarity. They just keep on talking about the same thing as though things that don't exist. You know, people who are traumatized and have concepts of God and God's dictates to them in their minds. It's almost like what's that term that's used? The not bipolar. I forget what it is, anyways. But the other sort of mind that is an imaginative mind, the bicameral mind. It's a theory, anyways, where the one side of the mind sees things that are, see the soil, see the sky, see the steering wheel in front of me, see the camera, smells, sights, touch, hearing, sort of thing. The other side sees this fantasy world that, might be supported by millions of people believing the same fantasy, or thousands of people. And it's real. It's real to them. So no amount of arguing, no amount of presentation of fact, no amount of questioning of the illogicalness of their contention makes any difference, because what is real, be like somebody who believes in fantasy, is traumatized into believe in fantasy. It's almost as real as to them as me seeing that soil over there. And no amount of arguing that anybody's going to present to me is going to convince me that doesn't exist. I think it's very similar in terms of the subconscious conviction for those who are strongly convinced that there is such a thing as their version of a deity, or their version of government legitimacy, these sorts of things. Or their sense that there's a border in the middle of that water, even though they can never see it. But they can never see it in their one cameral, but in their other cameral of their mind, of their imagination, of their subconscious. It's there. They can see it in their mind's eye, not in their real eyes. So I certainly think that, listening to that one on Scientology and going through this one on the Fundamentalist Church of Warren Jeffs, and listening to the same tactic that was used, which is child abuse, which is the tearing apart of families, the deliberately throwing members out of the cult and keeping the children, and just horrendous child abuse and indoctrination, and no education whatsoever except just church baloney. The solution, looking at what happens, the degrees to which that happens, those are extreme cases, right? Scientology and this fundamentalist church. But mainstream so-called Canadian society is really the same, because you have deluded parents sending their children to government-sponsored indoctrination camps called schools, and you end up with well-intended people, perhaps, who are just basically spokesmouths for a system that doesn't really exist in fact. It's a godly system. It's a fantasy. They'll speak in support of a border that they can't actually point to you. They will speak in terms of laws that are obviously not laws, because they're not universal. They don't apply to everybody. They don't apply across the board. They're just arbitrary decisions that people come up with. Anyways, I gotta start my car here. Just give me a second here.
Johnson had to take them onto the Zion property.
Sorry about that. I just got interrupted here. I gotta drive onto a ferry here. I'm going across the river. So I'm just going to show you the entrance to the ferry, and then I'll sign off for now. Little ferry crossing the North Saskatchewan River.